Hey, what's up guys? I am Brian and this is Tech Therapy. Today we'll be looking at the LG C2 and we will be comparing it to last year's sleeper hit, the Sony A80J, one of the most popular OLEDs of 2021 and one of the very best values. The A80 is 77 inches, the C2 is 55 inches. Now the C2, again, one of the best panels released earlier this year. And why I like to do these comparisons now is many of you are actually looking to pull the trigger. It is now the end of September with October, November, Black Friday on its way. It's in when many of you are actually looking to buy.
I've seen things people wouldn't believe.
Now they are different sizes and I know that's off-putting for many of you because it's not exactly a like for like. However, these are the panels that I have, but I do feel there's also value in comparing a 77 inch to a 55 inch so you know the difference in size. Many people that don't have larger panels or you've never experienced them don't really have the context or the ability to really see them side by side. You'll see the vast size difference of the 77 inches versus the 55 inch C2. Now the C2 I thought was one of the best panels this year. Behind me is a C1, which that C2 will also go against in a upcoming video, as well as an A90J of the same size. But I like comparing them. The C2 is a bit cleaner, has a bit more processing happening. So I did think it was an upgrade. Was it a huge upgrade? I don't think it was a huge upgrade, but it was an upgrade nonetheless, and I did think it was appreciable enough to make the purchase. Not to upgrade from the C1, but if you're buying one, the C2 was definitely worth getting. Now, special thank you to Value Electronics for supplying the LG C2 for extended review. Please consider making your next AV purchase. Check the description below for all their information. Let them know that Brian from Brian's Tech Therapy sent you. I've enjoyed the C2 immensely. We'll watch it compared to last year's amazing Sony A80J. All right, guys, here we are looking at the comparison. We're now in my living room, and I want to do this comparison starting with a brighter room. Not necessarily bright room, but more moderately lit, which is why you see the door to the right. Now you have the 77-inch A80J versus the LG C2 at 55 inches. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I do feel the C2 was an upgrade over the C1. I enjoy the C1. I use it every single day. I did feel the C1 is a tad, or I'm sorry, the C2 is a tad cleaner, a tad brighter than the C1. And that's not just up to pixel density. You'll see the C1 versus the C2 in a video, as well as against an A90J of the same size. That one's actually 65 inches. Now, it was an upgrade enough for me to think about switching out my C1, but keep in mind, that would be me selling the C1 and switching out. It's not enough to upgrade. I would never get rid of a C1 without getting close to the money you pay for and then upgrading. So when I say upgrade as somebody that does YouTube, it's very different than someone, getting rid of their TV and buying a brand new one just because. Like, I wouldn't take a big loss on it. Now, if you look at the comparisons, the A80J is amazing. Sony has its own signature. Both of these are in cinema settings, not standard or anything too vibrant. We do move into more vibrant settings later in the video. Now, I do get a lot of comments about, well, hey, this is too, standard or whatever. I do like to show every preset available. I do want to show you how it would look out of the box, as many of you, when you purchase them, that's what you'll encounter. TVs ship in standard, at least the last LG and some Sonys have released in standard. Now, we are in a more cinema mode here. They're made to look almost exactly the same, and you will see that the C1 is a bit brighter in scenes, which is interesting because being the smaller panel, it wouldn't have the brighter presence, meaning larger panels typically look brighter just inadvertently, and there are several key scenes where the C1 is a tad brighter. I keep saying C1, it's actually the C2. Now, when you see the C2 go against the A90J, which had the heatsink and was brighter than this A80J, I do feel that the C2 and the G2 had caught up to the A90J. Now, the A90J is a master series, basically calibrated at the factory, so I do feel that processing-wise and that little extra bit of brightness that you get from the G2 and that lesser extent to the C2 caught up to the A90J. Where I felt the A90J was not a clear winner over the C1, just a tad. And the reason I like these comparisons is it really does show you how close they are together. How even one saying, oh, this one destroys that one, just really isn't accurate. OLEDs are very close. Even QD OLEDs look very similar, under 1,000 nits. In the right content, they can look identical at times. Which is why at times I like to engage the processing just to show you the difference. But for the parts of this video, you can see the C2 has a little bit more depth as well. None of that is engaged. I will switch to a more vivid preset when we get to a more vibrant demo just to show you how bright they get. But you can see they look very similar. And in some of these scenes, while the C2 is a tad brighter, the colors are a bit deeper. So I do feel it is a step up in some ways. Now, it is negligible in terms of if you have an A80J or you have a panel from last year. To be honest, other than the processing, I do feel LG's C8 and C9 were very vibrant. I do feel with the CX and the C1, they knocked that down a bit to protect the panel, which is why I do feel, as I show you the settings here, I do feel that adding the heatsink was really just to protect the panel more so than make it brighter than the C9. It was more about getting it back to what the C9 was, if that makes sense. Recently did a burn-in video with an older C8 where the burn-in was pretty heavy, and it's amazing how good the C8 still looks. Check out that video, you'll be shocked at how amazing, other than the burn-in that is, how amazing it looks. Now also what I do like to illustrate here is for people that have not had a chance to really compare TVs, when you're in the store and you see a 77-inch off to the side and then you look over at a 55-inch, it's still hard to get the proper context of the different sizes. This is showing you exactly the difference in size between a 77 and a 55. So to me, these comparisons do have value. Now, even though the C2 is a loaner, we are talking real tech for real people. The 77-inch is mine. So when you have a bunch of TVs the same size, they're all loaners, you know, you can do the best you can with that, but for reality purposes, I'm showing you what I actually have. Now, where are you guys in this? Are you looking to buy your first OLED? Are you still looking at LEDs? To me, LEDs still have the superior HDR impact. Now, in this scene right here, you will see where the C2 is a tad brighter. You'll see it here in the sunset. Specular highlights are a bit stronger, even though it's the smaller panel, which leads me to believe at equal size at 77 inches, the C2 would look appreciably brighter, though in that scene, the A80J looks deeper. Really comes down to operating system a lot, and also the settings you like. Do you like the way Sony settings are, or Samsung settings, the way they word things? Do you like live color, black adjust? Do you like the noise reduction, the super resolution? Do you like that stuff on LG? But I think these look beautiful. I really wish that we could get to where we show you more movie content. It's just get hit with copyright so quickly for the most random things. Now with the A80J, I never really have an issue with it dimming, even in gaming. I know a lot of people talked about that and didn't have a lot of those problems unless you try to force it to dim. But it is my daily driver, meaning it is the panel that myself and my family watch all the time, and it is in a living room which is rather bright. I do have a video coming up as well with the C2, QN90B, and the X90, the reflection handling of those three different models, in a very bright room, and you can be the judge on which handles it better. OLEDs tend to become mirrors in bright rooms, not just because of the lack of their peak brightness, but because the black level acts as a mirror. Now, the A80J is a glossy panel. It was the only glossy panel of that size last year. I do feel the C2 is a bigger upgrade over the C1 than the A80K was over the A80J. Now, in terms of the A80K versus the A80J, to me, they're identical in many ways, maybe a little brighter on the A80K, but the settings and everything are virtually the same. The C2, the optimizer is a little bit different than the C1. Things are streamlined. There are other color settings that you can change on the C2. I like seeing that, especially in the game optimizer, where you don't have to leave the actual optimizer to get into the all settings tab. And the C1, you have to actually, it'll say all settings, and you end up into the bigger picture mode where the C2 takes you there. So typically when choosing a panel, it really comes into what features you desire. Now, the A80K, A80J, and Sony's lineup has been upgraded in regards to their gaming features. However, the game optimizer and the more HDMI 2.1 inputs of LG really do make it very gamer-centric, as we look here at a more vivid image from both. But the talk of one destroys the other is, to me, always a fallacy. It's when someone says, oh man, that destroys the other. I watch a lot of these panels side by side for hours and hours and hours, and it's amazing how close they really are. Once you calibrate them, as you saw with the shootout, they can look nearly identical, whether it's a QD OLED or a WRGB OLED. Now, in the last part of the demo, we're going to repeat that line demo, and you'll see it in a darker room. But I think we can agree they both look amazing. And even though I feel the C2 is a tad better, those of you that are familiar with Sony's picture quality will prefer that image and all the other presets. What I do feel Sony does better in terms of processing is when I'm watching something on a Sony, I tend to leave the remote and just watch the content, where LG, I do tend to jump around the settings quite a bit, from cinema to cinema user to standard to filmmaker mode, where with Sony I can leave it. Now here we are in an almost completely dark room for the end of this demo, and you can see how beautiful they both look. Now it looks like the C2's crushing stars basically is because we're too far away. Trying to get them both in frame is difficult. You can see with the red's a bit brighter on the C2. And I love this scene here. The vibrancy here is off the charts. A little more depth on the C2 there. So yes, at equal size, I think the C2 would have a greater edge. It is a newer panel. But yet I love what Sony and LG are doing, having the C2 and the A80J, having them much lower. The C2's flexibility of size. 42, 48, 55, 65, 77, 83. They really have cornered the market at the high end / mid price. What are your thoughts, guys? Are you still looking at WRGB OLEDs as they become more affordable? Hard to deny the S95B QD OLED is as affordable as these are in some ways. What are your thoughts? Do you want to wait for QD OLED to get larger? We'll see 77-inch Samsungs at the end of the year. Or are you looking to buy right now and you'll stay with LG or Sony? LG for me is tried and true. They've had OLEDs forever. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys are all doing well. Lots of content coming. I'll talk to you soon. Love you guys. Take care.